Good morning, students. Today we are going to see our next chapter, that is Sultan Ghiyansuddin in the Qazi's court. Sultan Ghiyansuddin in the Qazi's court. So this is a story about one sultan and who was in the Qazi's court. Okay. So we are, without wasting any time, we are going to start our story. Hundreds of years ago, in the eastern province of Bengal, Sultan Ghiyasuddin Azam Shah ruled the land. Ruled the land means hundreds of years ago, one eastern province of Bengal. We all know West Bengal. West Bengal is a part state of India. Okay, is one of the states of India. Sultan Ghiyasuddin was ruler of that land, means one part of the Bengal. He was ruler of that land at that time, means hundreds of years ago. Sultan Ghiyasuddin was the ruler of that land. His capital was Sonargaon. Sultan Ghiyasuddin was a good ruler. He ruled wisely and well. He respected men of learning. He had a deep regard for law. Means he was a good ruler. Sultan Ghiyasuddin was a good ruler, and his capital was Sonargaon at that time. Okay, so he was a good ruler. He had deep regard for law. He always follows the law, rules, and regulation, and also respect the men of learning. Okay. One day, while the Sultan was practicing with his bow and arrows, he accidentally wounded the only son of a poor widow. Okay. One day, while Sultan was practicing with his bow and arrow, at that time, the kings and the sultans, we can say, here king means what? The sultan, uh, were were having the only weapons that that is a sword, or we can say the bow and arrow. And okay, so these types of weapons were there, and sultan was practicing, and he accidentally wounded, means उसने accidentally अपने बो और एरो से, मीन्स तीर कमान से प्रैक्टिस करते हुए, एक ओनली सन ऑफ पुअर विडो, जो एक सिंगल मदर थी, उसके फादर, मतलब वो उसका हस्बैंड नहीं था उस लेडी का, और उसने उसके बेटे को, इकलौते बेटे को उस तीर से मार दिया, गलती से, एक्सीडेंटली सुल्तान ने उस लेडी के बेटे को. द wounded boy did not survive, means the wounded boy was dead. उसकी डेथ हो चुकी थी. Weeping and wailing, the poor widow went to the Qazi and told him what happened. The poor widow went to the Qazi. Here Qazi means a person who solves the here Qazi means the person who solves all the disputes or disagreements between the people. So द मीन्स यहाँ पे जो काजी है वो सारे जो लोगों के उस टाइम पे जो प्रॉब्लम्स होते थे या झगड़े होते थे या किसी को कुछ उसके साथ अन्याय होता था, तो वो सॉल्व करके देता था, वो काजी था. सो द विडो weeping means she was crying and went to Kazi's court and told him what had happened. The Qazi was an honest and upright man. He sent an officer to summon the Sultan to his court. Means the Qazi was a wise man and he was a upright man. Means he also follows the rules and law. Whoever the person will be, he have to give him punishment for his deed. So he sent an officer to summon the Sultan to his court. Means here summon means to order someone to come, to send for someone, means here to summon means to come in our court, to come in Qazi's court. So he told an officer to summon the Sultan. When the officer reached the palace, the guard stopped him and inquired about his business. When officer reached to the palace, now here you can see the king of the palace. Here Sultan means what? King. And before entering the king's palace, there are officers. Okay, there are officers. So officer asked him, what is your problem? They did inquiry. what is your business, for what work you have come here. Okay, when they learned that he had come to serve a summons for on Sultan, they were shocked. Means they were summoned. The officers were come to summons on Sultan, a written notice ordering someone to appear in the court, and that notice was for Sultan himself. Means Sultan means king of that area. So West Bengal's one area, that is Sonargaon, king of that Sonargaon, and it was for himself. The notice is for Sultan, and they were shocked. They refused to let him go inside in the palace. They said, "No, we can't permit you, or we can't let you go inside uh, and take Sultan to the court, because taking a king to a court for us for any matter, it is not respectful for a king." They thought that this will be not right. If we let him go, the king will do something with us, or he will be angry on us. They thought that the officer, and they refused to let him go. The officer was now in a fix. The guards the guards did not allow him to enter the palace. Now the officer who has come to summon the Sultan was in a fix, means he was in a difficulty. What to do? The guards were not allowing him to enter in the palace, but he knew that he could not return without serving the summon. If the qazi would not take him back, if he goes back to the qazi's court without serving the summon to the sultan, the qazi would not take him back, and the guards are not allowing him to enter inside. He was in a difficulty. What to do now? He had to find a way of reaching the sultan somehow. Somehow he had to find a way. Means उसको कुछ आइडिया करके सुल्तान तक पहुंचना पड़ेगा. What could he do? He thought and thought. अब मैं क्या करूँ, ऐसे वो सोचने लगा. At last he began to sound the azan, the call of call for prayer, loudly just outside the palace. Now, as you can see in this picture, the the officer which have come to Sultan, Sultan was began to sound the azan. Everyone knows what is azan. In azan, and loudly call, azan means call for prayer. Okay, so he started the call for prayer loudly just outside the palace of the sultan. It was not yet time for the prayer. There are certain times for the prayers, for the azan, and the person started the sound of azan outside the palace at not the time of the prayer. When the sultan heard the loud untimely call, he was greatly surprised. Anyone gets surprised if the azan calls, the call for prayer comes not in a time, in a different time, in a odd time, at the odd time. He ordered that the man giving call should be brought before him immediately. Means the person should come to me immediately. He told to his officer, please take the person to me. Okay, now sultan is calling the officer who have come to summon him. His soldiers rushed out of the palace gates, caught the officer, and took him sultans within a moment. Now what happened? His soldier rushed out of the palace gates and caught the officer who have come to summon sultan and take him to the sultan within a moment. Why? Because the officer was doing sound of azan in a odd time. When the officer knelt before the sultan, means when the officer knelt before the sultan, he was trembling with fear. Means officer was uh, officer was standing in front of the sultan and he was shivering, means he was trembling, means he was very afraid at that time, because he was standing in front of the sultan, the king. But he mustered all his courage and explained why he had given the call for azan. Okay, means he has gathered, muster mean he has gathered all his courage, उसने सारी अपनी हिम्मत जुटाई और explain किया कि why he had called for azan in a odd time. Then with shaking hands he gave the summons to sultan. Means with shaking hands means shivering hands, वो काँप रहा था और उसने वो समन जो नोटिस था, रिटर्न नोटिस, वो सुल्तान के हाथ में दिया. सुल्तान गियासुद्दीन took it without making any comment. He read the summons and told the officer to go back to Qazi. He announced that he would appear in the Qazi's court next day. And as we have seen in the very first paragraph, the sultan is very deep regard for law, and he has taken the notice, or we can say he has taken the summons in his hand without commenting a single word, and he has promised that I will appear in the Qazi's court in the next day. The next morning the sultan got ready to appear before the Qazi. He hid a sharp sword in his robe and set out. Means as he is sultan, he has taken his sword. मीन्स यहाँ पे उसने नेक्स्ट मॉर्निंग वो सुल्तान तैयार हो चुका था और उसने अपनी स्वॉर्ड मीन्स तलवार अपने पास लेके वो सेट हो चुका था उधर जाने के लिए. द कोर्ट रूम वॉज पैक्ड विथ पीपल. हियर द सुल्तान The sultan is now in the Qazi's court, and the courtroom, the Qazi's courtroom was full packed with the people. Everyone was eager to see what would happen. Everyone was eager because this was not just a case. This was just another case. It is a case of sultan, means the king. Everyone was very eager. The Qazi entered and took his place on the high seat of honor. In a little while, Sultan Ghiyasuddin entered the courtroom. Everyone stood up to show respect to the Sultan. Everyone stood up when the king appears. Everyone stand up, na? So everyone stood up at that time to show respect to the Sultan. But Qazi did not get up. Qazi was still sitting on his honorable seat, high seat. The Sultan stood in the docks and the trial began. Means Sultan stood in a docks and the trial began. Here an enclosed space in a court of law for the accused person. Here Sultan is a accused person, means सुल्तान आरोपी है तो उसको खड़े रहने के लिए डॉक्स दिया गया. ओके, तो डॉक्स में वो खड़ा और ट्रायल बिगिन हो गया. मीन्स वो जो कार्रवाई थी वो शुरू हो गई. द विडो प्रेजेंटेड हर कंप्लेंट. द काजी took note of all the evidence and in a grave voice addressed Sultan. Now widow presented her complaint in front of everyone. The Qazi took a note of evidence. She has evidence also. Then Qazi Qazi said in a grave voice addressed Sultan. Means Qazi said to Sultan, "You are guilty of causing the death of the only son of this poor widow. According to the law, you must pay fine for this offense. I order you to do with that without delay." Means you are guilty of causing the death of only son of this poor widow. Means एकलौते इसके बेटे को तुमने मार दिया और तुम ही इसके गुनहगार हो, तो तुमको अकॉर्डिंग टू द लॉ इसका फाइन भरना पड़ेगा और मैं तुमको अभी के अभी ऑर्डर देता हूँ कि तुम्हें ये फाइन भरना ही पड़ेगा without doing any delay. The Sultan accepted the judgment and apologized to the widow. He arranged to pay the fine immediately. The widow felt satisfied that the offense was brought home to the offender. When the case was over, the Qazi got up from his high seat of honor, respectfully bowed the Sultan and requested him to take his seat. Now the case was over. Sultan paid the fine to the widow, and widow was also satisfied with this judgment. And the case was over. Now Qazi got up from his high seat of honor and respectfully bowed the Sultan and requested him to take his seat. Now the Sultan then drew the hidden sword from his robe and told the Qazi, I am happy that you did not waver in your duty. You did not hesitate to punish me. Otherwise, I would have beheaded you with this sword. Here, what happens? Sultan is sitting on his place and उसने जो छुपाई हुई जो उसकी तलवार थी वो उसकी तलवार उसने बाहर निकाली और उसने क्या कहा कि मैं खुश हूँ कि तुमने अपनी ड्यूटी निभाई और विदाउट एनी हेजिटेशन के मीन्स विदाउट कुछ भी हिचकिचाते हुए ना हुए मुझे मेरी पनिशमेंट दी, मुझे मेरी सजा दी, नहीं तो मैं इस तलवार से तुम्हारा गला काटने वाला था, ऐसा सुल्तान ने काजी से कहा. द काजी देन पुट हिज हैंड अंडर द कुशन वेयर द सुल्तान वॉज सिटेड and brought out a whip. He said, Your Majesty, I am happy because you obeyed the law. Otherwise, I would have whipped you in this court. Here, the Qazi says, मीन्स जहाँ पे सुल्तान को बिठाया गया था उस क्वेश्चन के नीचे उस काजी ने भी एक तलवार रखी थी और उसने कहा योर मैजेस्टी आई एम हैप्पी बिकॉज यू ओबेड द लॉ. अगर आपने ये लॉ मेरा माना नहीं होता, आपने फाइन नहीं भरा होता तो मैं ही आपको इस कोर्ट के अंदर मारने वाला था, ऐसा दोनों ने कहा. द सुल्तान देन गॉट अप एंड embarrassed the Qazi. Thank God we both did our duty, he said. Thank God we both did our duty. अगर दोनों में से एक भी अपनी ड्यूटी से चूकता या शर्माता या घमंड करता तो फिर दोनों में से एक की जान चली जाती. Everyone present in the courtroom praised the two great men. So this was the greatness of the two person. This was the greatness of both of the persons, Sultan Ghiyasuddin and the Qazi. So this was the story, Sultan Ghiyasuddin in the Qazi's court. So I am going to send you a picture along with this video. You have to write the question answers in your notebook. Thank you.